everyone, welcome to my channel where we make easy to follow painting tutorials twice per week. For this one I decided to go with a bit more realistic botanical painting. We'll be making a little succulent slash cactus, and I start by taping down my paper, my sketchpad. I'm going to be working actually horizontally for this one, so I put it in the right direction. And I start by sketching down the flower using a normal graphite pencil. And the reason I'm using a graphite pencil rather than a watercolor one is because this way, if I mess up, I can easily erase it with a normal eraser, because watercolor pencils and even normal pencils have pigment in them, which is going to make that more difficult. And to sketch the actual flower, I start by making a small diamond slash grain shape in the middle, and then I add 2 petals over that, 2 petals on the side of that, and keep expanding it more and more till I fill out the page. The petals are very simple, very basic. They are basically some V shapes with a bit more rounded sides. And as I go further away from the center of the flower, I make them slightly bigger and bigger. I'm using a reference picture for this. I will put the link down in the description below. That way you can follow that one as well if you find that to be easier. Once I have my initial sketch laid down, I just go in with a normal eraser. I believe this is a Stabilo eraser, and I pick up any lines or any mistakes that I don't want to be showing through later on. You can obviously use a kneaded eraser if you have that on hand. Here I'm just checking my reference to see which colors I'm going to choose. For me, that was pink, dark blue, dark green, bright green, and black. So I start by coloring in the tips of each petal using the pink color. I'm just making small V shapes on the top of each petal, or I slightly add a bit of color to the sides, because I've noticed while looking at pictures that whenever these succulents tend to grow, their petals tend to get a bit on the pink side, and then I go in and fill the bottom side of each of these pink V shapes with my bright green. This is an aqua green color. You can obviously use an apple green, a grass green, or whatever. And under the green, I add either one of my darkest colors. I add dark blue. This is Prussian blue. For others, I just add dark pine green. And for others, I add violet. And at first, while I was thinking about making this, I just had my greens out on my desk. But then as I looked at the reference picture, and this is why it's important, at least to me, I noticed that it had much more shades, much more colors, like some blues and some violets that I would have not considered adding if I was just doing this from memory. Then on the bottom of each petal, I add black, which is going to be the shadow that's casting from the flower petals above each row. A little cheat you can do for the shadows: you can just outline the whole drawing using black, and then while blending out the petals, just bring that black outside towards the bottom of each one, and it's going to cast a very smooth shadow. I'm going to show you how to achieve this later on once I start actually blending, but for now I just outline them. Once I have everything colored in, I go with a very slightly damp brush, a watercolor brush actually, and I start blending from the inside petals, from the lightest area towards the darkest, so from my pinks towards my greens, my blues, and then my blacks. And if needed, once I reach my darker colors, I just clean the brush very gently on a piece of tissue so I can still keep my highlights and my shadows without them all getting muddy. I go from the pinks I slightly blend them in a scribble / circular motion towards the greens, then the greens towards the blue, and then lastly towards the black. And using this scribble circular motion, like I said, as you approach the black, you can use it to bring it in towards the bottom of your petal, and it's just going to look much smoother. And by the way, all of the supplies used, the pencils, the paper, etc., will also be put down in the description. You can always find a full list under each of my videos. If you get some texture left behind, maybe from the pencil markings or from the brush strokes, I find it's okay with these more realistic painting subjects, since it just makes it more interesting to the eye and makes it look sort of more natural, at least to me. I really like using rough paper, granulating colors if I'm using actual paints and similar, since it just makes it look more like a nature scene, especially if I'm painting like a city scene or maybe some houses. It really helps get the texture of whatever subject I'm doing without too much effort. I built my sketchbook for this as to what feels comfortable, so I can reach all of the sides without accidentally rubbing off the paint while it's still wet. So I just flip it around as needed to reach all of the petals on the opposite side. And again, I just blend my pinks, I clean the brush, then scribble it in towards the greens, the blues, or the purple, wherever I have in on the area, and then just bring some of the black towards the bottom to cast a more natural shadow. And what I find helpful for this, if I don't like the initial way it blended out, I can build up layers, I can add more layers with the pencils and reactivate them. If I don't like it, I can go over it again and get the result I want. But usually 1 or 2 layers is more than enough. For the bigger petals, I really don't try to be precise. I just blend them out, since they're going to be very bright towards the end, because that's where the plant ends. There is no more. And just very slightly add a bit of shadow towards where it begins. Once I have blended everything in, I go back in with my black pencil and just go over the outlines of the petals once again. I want the center of this flower to be straight black, and also behind each of the petals I want a very strong shadow casted on the ones beneath them. And I very gently activate using the tip of my brush with very little water. That way it's going to look stronger and more vibrant. Lastly, I take the white pencil and then go almost at the edge of each petal and add another V shape on the inside to give a bit of a highlight, and also give it a bit more dimension, make it look more like an actual succulent plant. I just make a couple of lines, and for some I also add a line right in the middle. I'm later going to blend this out with my watercolor brush, but I just want a very small amount of white here. You can obviously use a white marker or gouache, but I want a small hint of color. That's why I use the pencil. And like I said, I go in with my brush and I just blend the very bottom, the one where I want to be darkest. If an area got too bright, I just go in back with my black watercolor pencil to make it a bit darker. Like I said, I can layer these on top of each other without any issues to create a bit more depth with my subject. I add some finishing touches, and lastly I take off the tape in the opposite direction to avoid the paper from tearing apart. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments down below, and we'll see each other in the next one.